Welcome to Hardwood Handicappers with Zach Cohen, right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
This is Zachary Cohen, VSiN.com senior editor with another episode of Hardwood Handicappers. Today is January 27th. It is 10 a.m. Eastern, and we have a bunch of picks for this evening. I have two player props, two sides of one two-game parlay for you. And then at the end, I'm going to give you some thoughts on a future that I like. So we have a lot to get into, but I want to just kind of start right away with the first game that I have a pick for, and that's the Trailblazers at the Washington Wizards, 7 p.m. Eastern tip. This is a game where the Wizards are getting 7.5 at home right now at DraftKings Sportsbook. That's where I'm reading the odds from. They might change by the time you're actually listening to this, but that is where I'm getting them at the moment. And the total in this game is 231.5. This is actually a game that I jumped on last night, and I threw this play on the Pro Picks page. I have the Wizards +8 at -112, and I would still take it at +7.5. I just think this is a really tricky spot for Portland coming off a loss against Boston last night, where they did exert a lot of energy. It was a game that was mostly a blowout throughout the contest, but then got a little bit tighter later in the fourth quarter. The Blazers ended up actually covering that game. I had 8.5, got really lucky because I took that thinking Denny Avdija would play, and he obviously was not out there, but they ended up finding a way. But I do think that there's going to be some tired legs on their side tonight. And even if Avdija does play, which I suspect he will, because I think they held him out of the first leg of that back-to-back so that he could play, against his former team tonight, I still think that the rest of the rotation will be a bit tired, and the Wizards are actually coming off 2 full days of rest. And this team has just been a lot better lately. Washington has covered in 3 of the last 4 games. I think we're starting to see some improved play out of kind of all those young, talented guards that they have, especially Trey Johnson. He's one that I've been really, really impressed with. The way that he shoots the ball is effortless. It's beautiful. That guy has, a world-class jumper, and he's going to be a special player for them at some point in the near future. And then they have a lot of other talent in that backcourt, in the front court with Sarr. I just really, really like this team. And now that they're playing a little bit better, a little bit more together, I think that they can keep this game close against a tired opponent. And I think that's especially true if we don't see Drew Holiday out there. And I do think that there's a chance that Holiday misses this game because unlike Avdija, he did play last night. He wanted to go against his former team, I'm sure, but he ended up playing against the Celtics. He's been dealing with a calf issue this year, so I'd imagine they're going to be somewhat safe with him. I would be shocked if he's out there tonight, but even if he is, it'll be limited minutes, at least compared to what his normal workload is. And I do think that his point of attack defense against those young guards would definitely make for a tough matchup for Washington. But if he's not going to play a ton and he's not going to play, as many minutes if he is out there, I do think that those Wizards guards will have some success tonight. So I think Washington keeps this game close. I think that they'll have a chance to win it as well late in that game. So if you want to sprinkle the money line, go for it. I didn't personally. I'd rather just take the spread, but I do think it'll be that type of tight game. The next game that I have a pick for is the Bucks at the Sixers. This one tips at 8 p.m. Eastern, and the Sixers are 10.5 point favorites. Total's 219.5, and this is a game where Milwaukee is going to be without Giannis Antetokounmpo and Kevin Porter Jr., and that means I'm going back to kind of the old faithful of Ryan Rollins over on points and assists. I have the over 27.5. That is -118, and I really, really like this one. I mean, early in the year, this is something that I was going to regularly. I mean, at least when it was no, Giannis, but especially when it was no Giannis and Kevin Porter Jr., because he played 6 games without those guys, averaged 24.8 points per game and 7.8 assists per game. That's well over the number for tonight. Over in 5 of the 6 games that he played without that duo. And I really like this matchup. I mean, for as explosive as Philly's guards are, they are not very good defending on the perimeter. So I do think that Rollins is going to be able to kind of live in the paint. And this is a Sixers team that's just 25th in the NBA guarding at the rim, where Rollins scores 31% of his points. So I think he's going to be driving a lot in this game. I think he's going to be able to finish at the basket. And I also just think overall, this is a Sixers team that really struggles against pick and roll ball handlers, and 26th in the league at guarding that specific play and that specific type of player. And I do think that this is a game where Rollins is going to get to run a ton of P&Rs, with no Giannis or KPJ, 2 guys that will run them when they're out there. It'll be mostly Rollins, and, he scores 33% of his points on pick and rolls, 5.7 points per game. And, I just kind of think that this is a game where there's going to need to be somebody on Milwaukee that steps up and plays well, why not Rollins, the guy that did it early in the year? And he also did it last game when Giannis left and they nearly came back to beat the Nuggets at home in what I believe was Giannis's last game with the Bucks. It was Rollins toward the end that was kind of, playing well and giving them a chance. And I also will say, like, this is the type of game where you do have to worry about a blowout because obviously, Philly's a 10.5-point favorite in this one. You need Rollins to play 4 quarters most likely in order to get this prop to go over. But I do think they're going to be able to keep it somewhat reasonable. I don't know if it's going to be an actually close game, but I could see it being a game that's, teetering on 10 all night. I don't think it'll turn into a blowout. This is a third game in 4 nights for Philadelphia. Milwaukee was off last night. I do think that they should find a way to keep this tight, even without, their best player. Next game that I have something is the Pelicans at the Thunder. This one tips at 8 p.m. Eastern as well. The Thunder are 14.5-point favorites. Total's 233.5. And I'm kind of going against my thing where I don't like to talk about double-digit favorites. And that's because I do think the Pelicans are the right side in this game. I have New Orleans plus 14.5 at minus 110. And the reality is that OKC is just insanely banged up right now. Like, I don't think that you can really rely on this team to win by 20 plus, in this case, 15 plus. When you're playing without, Isaiah Hartenstein, J-Dub, Alex Caruso, AJ Mitchell, potentially Cason Wallace, who is questionable. I know that this team is deep. I'm not worried about them winning games without, a bunch of their key rotation pieces. But I do think there's a huge difference between, winning games with the guys that they have, like Aaron Wiggins, and them playing more minutes, and winning by 20 plus and just kind of continuing to look like OKC, the monster that we saw early in the season. There's just a little bit too much pressure on a guy like SGA when, he's playing with the backups a little bit more. And I just kind of think that this Pelicans team can't be counted out here. I mean, you look at what they've done lately. They are 4-2 against the spread over the last 6 games. The 2 non-covers there were 8-point losses. Nothing, embarrassing. It was like a road loss against the Pacers and a home loss against another playoff team. Let me just quickly look that up. But it's just been another team where they've been competitive again. It was a home loss against Detroit by 8 points as 7.5-point underdogs. So very nearly covered that spread. But yeah, this has been a competitive team again. Meanwhile, the Thunder have lost, 2 straight games and 3 of the last 5, and they've done so both straight up and against the spread. So haven't exactly been winning and winning comfortably. And I do think that the Pelicans are going to have some success on the inside in this game. Like I said, no Hartenstein. I know Chet Holmgren will be out there, but I do think that Derek Queen's going to be able to move Holmgren around a little bit and have some success offensively. And I also really like the New Orleans wings and forwards right now overall against OKC at the moment with no J-Dub. You're talking about a Pelicans team that has Zion playing really well. Jones, Murphy, these guys are all competing at a high level. I think they're going to be able to do a nice job of just kind of keeping this thing close, at least on the perimeter. I think the guard spot I'm very worried about, to be honest, because it's Jordan Poole and a bunch of other really negative defenders against SGA. That's where it could get ugly. But I think that everywhere else, the Pelicans stack up kind of nicely. So I think 14.5 is a pretty generous number. We're getting ready for Big Game 60 with a big deal to match. Save $60 off a VSiN Pro annual subscription when you sign up using promo code HARDWOOD, all one word. Become a VSiN Pro annual subscriber and start betting smarter all year long with full access to our daily best bets from VSiN hosts and guests, real-time DraftKings and Circa betting splits, AI-powered prop tools and matchup analysis, 24/7 video and full show replays on the VSiN Watch app, plus all of our betting guides and expert picks for the Super Bowl and upcoming March Madness. Don't miss out on this big game deal. Visit vsin.com/subscribe and use promo code HARDWOOD to save $60 off a VSiN Pro annual subscription today. That's vsin.com/subscribe and HARDWOOD, HARDWOOD. Let's move on now to the Pistons at the Nuggets. And by extension, we're also going to talk about the Clippers at the Jazz at 10 p.m. Eastern, because this is a game in which, or 2 games in which I'm going to parlay the two favorites. I know that's definitely a bit of a square move at times. I don't really care. If I see value, I see value. And I think that Detroit's going to win in Denver. And I needed a way to get that down a little bit. I don't want to lay the points because Denver has been a little bit feisty without Nikola Jokic. So I found the Clippers to be the best, leg for a parlay. And that's the way I'm going with it. I had no apologies there. So Pistons money line versus the Nuggets. Clippers money line versus the Jazz. I got this at -118. Not sure where it's going to be at now. You might be able to do better than me. We'll see. But the reality with the first game is that this Nuggets team is just really banged up. It's like the Thunder team before, but actually even worse. You're talking about no Nikola Jokic, no Aaron Gordon, no Christian Brown, and no Cameron Johnson. 4 of their 5 starting players, 2 of their best 3 players in Jokic and Gordon, and obviously Jokic, the best player on the planet. Meanwhile, the Pistons are healthy. And I think that there's been a lot of talk lately about how this Denver team has been performing at a high level without the Joker, and they have. They've been really, really solid, 7-3 in their last 10 games. But in that span, they have a -1.1 net rating. And in that same span, last 10 games, the Pistons are 8-2 with a +11.8 net rating. So the Nuggets might have been, be playing, good basketball over the last 10 games, but the Pistons continue to play great basketball. And I just kind of think that everything that you're going to see on the court in this game kind of favors Detroit. I mean, Cade Cunningham will be the best player on the floor with no Jokic out there. The Pistons defense, which is number 2 in the NBA at 110 points allowed per 100 possessions. This is a team that I think is, as good as anybody defensively, and the numbers show it. I did the Pistons defense when compared to the Pistons offense, the Nuggets offense, Nuggets defense, the best overall unit on the floor in this game. And I do think that the size inside for the Pistons will actually be a strength in this one, where Jalen Duren, his athleticism and activity going against potentially like a Jonas Valanciunas, I did that favors Duren quite a bit. And then when they do bring Isaiah Stewart in, there's some extra toughness in there that I think is going to be very tough for the Nuggets to match. So I just really think this is a game Detroit will win. The second game, the Clippers against the Jazz, you do have Kawhi Leonard questionable for the Clippers, so no guarantee he'll be out there. That's a little bit scary, especially in Utah, where teams can occasionally sleepwalk and just, get themselves in tough situations. But that's why I like the money line, not the spread. All I need is the Clippers to win. And the Clippers really need to win. This is a team that got off to such a bad start at the beginning of the year that they really can't afford to let games like this go if they're going to kind of push for a 6 seed, or I know that's a little bit more unrealistic, but at least a 7 or 8 seed where they'll be hosting their play-in tournament game. This is the type of game that's very important to them. And the Jazz will be without Keontae George. Yusuf Nurkic is doubtful, and Larry Markkinen is questionable, which to me is like, I don't know. I always assume he's not going to play when he's questionable, but at the same time, he was questionable last game, so maybe they will force him out there. But I don't think he could win this game by himself without George. So I think that LA wins this game with or without Kawhi. If they do have Kawhi, though, I think it's a comfortable win, one where they might even win by double digits. So if you're looking for the spread there and Kawhi ends up being announced as active, I would definitely jump on the Clippers. The next game that I want to talk about, it's actually the last game I want to do before we talk a little bit about some futures. It's the Nets at the Suns, 9 p.m. Eastern tip. This is a game where the Suns are laying 8.5 points. Total's 210.5. Devin Booker will be out for Phoenix tonight. Jalen Green is questionable, but it seems like they want him to play. But my pick in this game, because of all the uncertainty at the guard situation, is Grayson Allen over 3.5 assists at -125. Over the last 5 games, Allen's averaging 7.3 potential assists per game, 5.0 assists per game, and then a 5.8 adjusted assists per game. So he's been doing a really good job of distributing the basketball. Hasn't exactly had the best luck in terms of teammates making shots, but I do think this is the right play in this game. He had 8 assists against the Nets on January 19th. Even if Green is out there in the lineup tonight, he'll be on a minutes restriction because what he dealt with last game was kind of a hamstring tweak after coming back from a lengthy hamstring injury. The Suns have to be careful with him. I don't think we're really at risk of Allen playing less than 30 minutes, but I think that there's a chance that he really does some good work as a playmaker here. I think this is a guy that when Booker's out, everyone kind of expects him to score, and he probably will. I mean, he's just such a good three-point shooter. When the Suns run offense through him, good things tend to happen, but he's also a very underrated playmaker because he's very underrated going to the basket. I think he has a better, first step than people think. He kind of lives at the rim with this Suns team right now. I've been really impressed with the way he's been able to drive to the hoop, and he tends to make the right reads when he is on the way to the basket. So I think he's going to have a good game as a passer. I think 4 assists is very, very reasonable. So I think that that's the right play here. And I should note, I kind of think the under is the right play too. It's a really, really low number, but I do think that, if you really are desperate for a side or a total in this game, I'd probably go under. I think the Nets are going to play at a very slow pace, and they're a pretty strong defensive team. Suns, meanwhile, are a top 5 defensive team in the league. They want to play a little bit faster than Brooklyn, but without Booker, it might not be an option. So I do think this will end up being a really ugly contest. So 210.5 or whatever you can find to maybe a little bit higher. I do think the under is probably the best way to go. Now, I did mention I wanted to do some takeaways from last night and kind of look towards the futures market. And the 2 games that really stood out to me were the Hornets beating the brakes off the Sixers, 130-93. It's just another, great performance for this Hornets team that is starting to make that win total look really, really low from before the year. This team has won 3 games in a row, 5 of the last 7. I just kind of think that we talked about it a couple of days ago or last Thursday with Jonathan Von Tobel on the show with us. This is a team that I really see making the play in. I don't know what the price is anymore. I'll pull it up at DraftKings, but I do think that they're going to end up passing the teams in front of them and ending up in that field. So I do think right now at DraftKings, plus 220, hopefully you can find a better number than that, but I think that that's worth it either way because Milwaukee is falling out without Giannis. This is one of the worst teams in the league without Giannis out there, and I do think that the other teams that are in front of them are, maybe a little bit ahead, but are definitely worse. I think that the Hawks, they've won 3 straight games, but I like the Hornets more than I like the Hawks right now. The Bulls are a bit of pretenders right now, so 23-23. They are, 4.5 games up on the Hornets, but there's a lot of season left. If the Charlotte has LaMelo Ball, Con Knipple, and Brandon Miller out there for most of their games the rest of the season, I feel really good about them passing at least one of those teams. I just think they are, one of the 8 best teams in the Eastern Conference, and all we need is for them to finish 9 or 10. And the recent numbers suggest that they have a good chance of doing so. They've obviously dug a bit of a hole with their early season start, but there's plenty of time for them to catch them, almost half of the season. So I would not be crazy. I wouldn't be scared by the plus 220. And if you could find a little bit better than that, strongly suggest jumping on that. And the other one that I have, it's the Cavaliers. I talked about this a little bit yesterday, and I've talked about how the Eastern Conference I view as, kind of wide open. But I will say Cleveland is starting to look like the team that I think that we all thought they would be before the season. Since the start of January, they are 9-4 and 7th in the NBA in efficiency differential. One of the teams above them, I've talked about this a little bit, is Charlotte, who had a 55-point win over Utah. So not really sure that those numbers would actually hold up compared to Cleveland's if you're talking about a normal win there instead of an absolute blowout, because it completely skewed their advanced stats profile. But 9-4, 6th in the league in offense, 13th in defense. And that's kind of where they need to be. I think that Cleveland needs to be a top 5 offensive team and a borderline top 10 defensive team in order to look like an Eastern Conference contender. And I think that, they're right on the cusp of that. And when they do get healthy and they have all of their bodies back, I think they're going to look just like that. I think that offensively, at the very least, they will be top 5. I think defensively is where they have a little bit more concern. But I think that this team is starting to play some great basketball. The back-to-back blowout set over Orlando was really impressive. And I just think overall, the guards on this team, the defensive bigs that they have, and now the wing depth that they will eventually have when they get Max Strus back because of the improved play of Jalen Tyson, gives this team, an NBA Finals ceiling. I don't think that they could win the NBA Finals. I think whoever comes out of the East will end up getting smoked by whoever comes out of the West. But I think that the Cavaliers can make the Finals. I think that right now, if I were kind of, making a top tier in the Eastern Conference, it would be Detroit, New York, Boston, and Cleveland. I think that Cleveland, you're getting the best price out of all of them at 6-1, which is where I just saw it, 6-1 at Caesars. So if you could find it there, that's where I jump on it. But this is a play that I am putting in. I think the Cavaliers are a really good bet at the moment. I think Boston might be the team to beat in the East just because I do expect Jason Tatum to come back at some point in the next 1 to 2 months. And obviously they've gotten themselves in a really strong situation where they should be hosting a home court, playoff series in round one. So if Tatum comes back and looks at like 80% of the player that he was before he got injured, that's a really dangerous team. But I think that Cleveland is the best price you're getting right now on a top tier Eastern Conference team. So don't hesitate to, kind of buy back in on this Cavaliers team. I know it's 28-20 on the year, not the most, impressive record in the world, but at the same time, only 1 game back from the 3 seed, which is the Raptors, 2 games back from the 2 seed, which is the Celtics. There's a really good chance that Cleveland ends up hosting a playoff series, and we end up looking back on the first half of the season like it didn't matter at all. So I think this is a really good play at the moment. But let's recap the best bets that we have for tonight. We'll do, it's enough about the futures. I have the Wizards +8 at -112 versus the Blazers. As I said, I would take that at +7.5 if you have to. I have Ryan Rollins over 27.5 points and assists for the 76ers. That's -118. Pelicans +14.5 at -110 versus the Thunder. I have a parlay of the Pistons moneyline versus the Nuggets and Clippers moneyline versus the Jazz at -118. Then Grayson Allen over 3.5 assists at -125 against the Nets. So 5 plays for me tonight. Then I have the Cavaliers at 6-1 to win the Eastern Conference, and I'll write a little bit about that at VSiN.com if you want to see exactly how I'm playing it. It is going to be a bigger play for me, so I'll write up what I am putting on it, probably 3 units, and then also a little bit about why. But I talked about why here, so you don't really have to read that part of it. But yeah, I really like the Cavaliers at 6-1, and I'll have write-ups up at VSiN.com for both sides and player props if you want to kind of get more on all the stuff I talked about today. And then tomorrow we will be joined by Kelly Bidlin. He said that he was not able, to do it this morning because he had to do some golf stuff. Very understandable. He works on the podcast Long Shots, a great, VSiN golf podcast that we do. But we'll have Kelly on tomorrow. We'll have JVT on Thursday. So we'll have our guests this week, and we'll have way more action tomorrow night. So good luck with your plays tonight. Hopefully another winning night like we had last night. And make sure you join me for the Wednesday edition of Hardwood Handicappers.